Hey guys, what a nightmare we've had today. I just got home from work and it's been an absolute nightmare. I spent ages yesterday on this, just getting it all done again because I haven't been online with you guys for a while and we've just had a nightmare. First off, I forgot how to get Scott in and what have you, who's the guest for today. Anyway, let's get to the point. Welcome back to Simplified Gardening's live streams, and it's been a little while, so before I go into introducing our guest and everything else, I just want to say what's been going on. So since my last two videos, which went absolutely nuts, so thank you for that, I've had a pretty big project going on, and I will show you some of that over the next few weeks, and it's pretty much finished now. So but I wanted to be able to just get on with it because the weather's so bad. I didn't want to be able to you know, have to stop and film and everything else. Is the sound coming through okay to everybody? Am I clipping, or is it too loud, too quiet? Can you let me know? Okay, right. So if you can let me what the sound's like. In the meantime, what I'm going to do, guys, is introduce our guest, and this is Scott. Hi, Scott. How you doing?
I'm well, Tony. Nice to be here after so long.
Oh, it's been ages, haven't it? You know,
Yeah.
it's funny this year. I feel like I've hardly sort of done many videos because I've just had so much on my plate, and of course you know about a lot of the stuff because we've spoken, but it's nice. So today we're going to be talking about. Let me just see if I can just pull something up on my screen a moment because I've lost what it is. But basically, winter garden essentials, and Scott, how is your garden getting on at the moment?
So it's mostly frozen at the moment. I have a couple inches of snow covering all my beds. I'm doing a little bit of gardening in my greenhouse,
Right.
and the plants are doing okay there. But outside, everything's asleep now.
Wow. So it's all nice tucked up and everything.
Yep.
Oh, great. Okay. So, guys, excuse me looking over here. I'm not ignoring you. It's just that's where all the chat is, and I will get to set the room up and everything much better. Seems to be a bit of a delay going on at the moment, so I'm sorry about that. I seem to have lost chat as well for some reason, but uh, oh dear. Right. Okay. It is what it is. Let's see if we can do this. So, winter garden essentials, Scott. Oh, what's going on here? Bear with me, guys. This is a bit of a mess today. You can see I was prepared, Scott.
It's all good. You've
Okay,
been
so
away a while, so you gotta learn it back again.
yeah. So look, it takes ages, doesn't it? Yeah, and especially this software. I've come down, yeah, and yesterday I played around with it, and I thought, fantastic. It's all working really well. I've come rushed home from work tonight, and I've switched it all on, and everything has wanted to update. Just one of those things. So we're going to be looking at some things like tools and equipment and selecting the best vegetables, that sort of thing. So Scott, when we talk about tools and equipment that the audience might want to be utilising in winter and why they want to sort of use those things through winter.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing to consider is how harsh the winter is. So my winters here in Colorado, my ground freezes. I can't do anything outside unless I take action to keep the soil warm and to keep the plants growing, like by adding a plastic cover or extra heat or extra light to keep things growing. Even my greenhouse mostly stays above freezing, but I'm not able to grow a lot of plants. So the basic tools and the basic structures are the same any time of year, but particularly during the winter when there's less light. So usually you're going to need some type of supplemental light system, and there's less heat, so you might need to have a supplemental heat system.
Yeah.
Or you just have to choose plants that don't need as much heat and don't need as much light.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I know you're playing around with some stuff at the moment in your greenhouse as far as heating and lighting goes. How's that working out for you?
It's working great. I did a video last month. We had a very, very cold snap of temperatures. We were between -12 and -13 Celsius for 3 days in a row overnight. And my greenhouse, actually, the coldest it got on the last day was about -4 Celsius. And that's because I've got so much water. I've got about 250 gallons of water in barrels and jugs in my greenhouse. And so that absorbs the heat during the day and then helps release it at night to keep the air warmer. And I'm very happy. It hasn't gone below freezing in a couple of weeks now, and we've had some very, very cold nights.
Yeah, it's same with us. We've had loads of issues with rain here. It's just been absolutely crazy, and it's hammering down out there now. We've had storm after storm. Now, although I'm not really growing because I've had, I've still got some winter stuff in, but I'm not really growing this year because I've had a few projects in mind over the winter, and I thought these plants are going to be in my way where I need to store stuff, so I'm not really doing that. But on that same respect, in my big polytunnel, I've got two 1,000 litre, so I think that's about 250 gallon IBC containers, and they are fantastic heat sources. They absorb that heat through the day and then release it in the night. They're fabulous, and you'll notice that tunnel is quite a few degrees warmer than the outside temperature just because of those. It really is good. A load of people had a few issues with hearing your sound at first, Scott, so I've turned you up. So don't worry, I've turned you up this end, so hopefully everything's fine. If not, they can let us know in the comments. So let's have a little look who's on the chat. There's quite a few people in at the moment. So we've got Jay. Thanks, Jay, for coming in.
Nice.
Danny is moderating. Jay's moderating, so that's fantastic. Frank is in. Dusty Flats, becoming a green stalker. Jeanette, Shirley. So we've got tons of people in, yeah?
Nice.
Which is really nice considering that we're running alongside another live stream at the moment. And this is the one thing about me live streaming, Scott. Unlike you can select a specific day, because of my working pattern, I can't. It makes it really difficult. So I have to just trust that people see that sort of screen, that thumbnail, and say, right, okay, Tony's finally on live streams again. So what sort of, when you look at the vegetables that you tend to grow through winter, what are you thinking? Why do you select those vegetables, and what are you doing to make sure that they grow well?
So it's primarily the temperature is the main factor, the temperature that the plants can handle without sustaining damage. And so it's the plants that we typically are growing in early spring. So peas and spinach and lettuce and a lot of the root crops like beets and turnips. Those are the plants that can have a night where the temperature gets below freezing, and it's not going to kill the plant. It might slow them down a little bit, but it's not going to kill the plant. So as long as I'm looking at those type of plants for growing in the winter months when it's going to get cold and also less light, that's my first focus.
Yeah, that's great. It's I find that too many people, when they sort of pack up after the summer and they think, what am I going to do now? And like I've made a conscious decision not to grow this winter, but they think, oh, that's the end of it, let's pack everything up. And there's so much that can be grown, but you do need to take all of these factors into consideration, and pick your the specific plants that you want to grow carefully for the little microclimates you have and where you're going to grow them. And like I said, the heat sources like the water or the sand and things like that are fantastic
Yeah.
for that, aren't they? Okay. So what about planting techniques then?
Well, and so the biggest thing, if you're growing outside, now growing indoors is pretty constant year round, and so you really don't need to worry too much about whether you're starting seeds or using plants that you've transplanted into a container indoors. But particularly during winter, there's so much less light, and the ground is generally cooler. It's going to take a lot longer for seeds to germinate. And so if you put seeds into cool soil in the summertime, it's no problem. In warm soil, a lot of these seeds will germinate in 2 or 3 days. But in winter, you put the same seed into a cool soil, it might take 2 or 3 weeks for a lettuce seed or a turnip seed to germinate and start growing. And then when they do start growing, because there's less light, they're either going to slow down and have very little growth, or they might get leggy. They might actually be stretching to try to find more light, but there's just not enough light. And you're much farther north than I am, so you get much less light in winter than
Yeah.
I do,
Do
and
you know
I'm
what?
not getting a lot.
The other day we had such a bad storm. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning and it still looked like it was 4 o'clock in the morning. It was so dark out there. I was thinking, plants just aren't going to do much with it then. Folks, if you've got any questions, I haven't had time to set up the question page today, but just put it in the chat. Start it off with the word question in capitals and then make it easier for the moderators to find and point out to us, okay? So obviously, part of winter growing, Scott, is that we'll be starting off some of our spring stuff very shortly. If you haven't already, there's some people now already sowing onions and things like this. What sort of equipment are you using for that to raise them on? Where are you doing it? And how does that sort of work for your needs?
And so I'm doing that all indoors because even though I can keep my greenhouse above freezing most of the time, that's still too cold because it just takes so long for the seeds to germinate. And so I'm doing it indoors in my basement, in my grow room. I got lights, I've got trays, I've got pots, I've got seedling containers, and the temperature generally is somewhere in I think the coldest my basement gets is about 20 Celsius, but I can usually keep it around 20 to 21 degrees, which is ideal for most of the seeds that I'm starting. And then I can take those seedlings, and especially if they're the hardy seedlings, I can move those back outside, either into my garden or into an area that I might have a little microclimate. But whether it's starting those kind of plants indoors or my peppers or tomatoes, I just use the same setup because the seed starting is essentially the same regardless of what it is I'm growing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And with are you growing much this year now through the winter or?
So I have some growing indoors right now. I have a hydroponic system that I got last year, and I tried growing tomatoes and peppers, and they didn't do as well. Finding the nutrient balance is really difficult when you're first starting hydroponics, but it
Yeah,
works great for lettuces and the salad crops. So I am doing some of that indoors over the winter because the temperature is nice and comfortable, and with the hydroponic system, it actually is working out pretty well. But I'm still a couple months away from my main seed starting with
yeah, yeah.
the tomatoes and peppers and things
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think we're very similar on the time scales, but you get people that will start off certain things like very early brassicas or onions, things like that,
Yeah,
and
and,
then
and
later
so
on go on.
onions onions last year, I started onions in January. And so I have been cleaning up my seed area. I'm going to be doing onions earlier than I did last year, probably at the end of this month, end of December.
Yeah.
I'll be starting some onions and maybe some shallots and give myself an extra month from what I had last year.
Yeah, typically around here, my area, Boxing Day tends to be quite a good day for
Okay.
onion sowing and things. So around there. But I'm hoping, like I said, I've been on a big project and I'm hoping that it'll be completely finished by then, because that's going to help with my seed germination and stuff later on. So let's have a little look what we've got here. Is there any questions in the chat? Right, so Just Karen 3478. Hey man, what's the latest you can start spring bulbs? What would you say there for you, Scott? What's it in your area?
And so in my area, the latest is early November. Most bulbs, most spring bulbs, and it's everything from tulips to garlic. They need some time in the ground for the bulb to get established and start sending out a few roots. And in my area, uh, it's December. It's about the middle of December when the ground starts freezing. And so giving spring bulbs 4 to 6 weeks in the ground before the ground freezes is usually a good target.
Yeah.
And so it depends on how harsh your winter is, of course. But in my area, beginning of November is when we stop putting our bulbs in.
Yeah. And again, it's very similar for us. Usually it's about now would be the end. But we are really mild this year. We had a real cold spell for about a week. It went really cold, and now we're back up to 8-9 degrees Celsius. And so if you have them, get them in. Because it's better than just letting them sit in a bag and rotting. They got 2 chances then, haven't they? But you should be able to just about get away with it. If you've still got them now, get them in the ground and see what comes from it. We've got another question. Let's have a look here. From Richard Preston. Hi, gents. I had a bare root cherry tree, Stella. Sorry, I'm losing the... losing it. A bare root cherry tree, Stella, delivered the other day. Would you suggest pruning to waist height to get nice open tree for the future when planting?
Yeah, very possibly. I think it all comes down to the shape of the tree that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got some videos on my channel that show me pruning fruit trees.
Yeah.
And I do where I want the branches to start spreading out. And so about waist high is good. I've got some fruit trees that I made that heading cut, that top cut at about a meter high. And from that point is where the branching is going to be the main scaffold branches of the tree. So if you want that open vase shape and you want the branches lower on the tree, absolutely a heading cut for a new fruit tree whip is exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Richard, when my next video comes out, which will be like a garden update, just showing you what's been going on, in there you will see 3 cherry trees that have 2 varieties on each. So they are trees that have a dual cherry, and they're all cut exactly the same, but now they have grown into quite substantial trees, but they start at waist height on the branching, which is a good size because it allows you to pick the fruit low. You can net them and everything else. Okay, cool. Right, at J. So you've got Bohemian Herbology and Solutions at J. For sure, that's something else. Sorry. Let's have a look. He's talking to Jay there. Yeah, so Locke is saying that the Potty Mouth premiere is on and 250 people watching. Yeah, I know. That was something that Danny had put out to me after I made it live yesterday. I wasn't aware that it was going to be the same time, but unfortunately for me, I'm limited in when I can
Right.
run these around my working patterns now. I'm nights tomorrow, so I couldn't do it, and then I'm going away. So tomorrow, the day after, I'm nights, and then I'm going away. So it was really difficult to get it fit in, and I wanted to be able to start again before Christmas. I don't know
Good.
what it is. I just felt like this year has been so busy, but yet people haven't been having the content from me as much, and
Yeah.
I just felt that that I needed to do something. And the reason for that, guys, is because of this. So this is my new book, and this is a special book, guys, all right? And it's called Simplify Vegetable Gardening. It's being published by the Quarto, where's that? Quarto, and it's Cool Springs Press. And this is only a proof book, okay? But it's absolutely, I don't know if you can see any of this, packed with really good information on growing. But this, again, like I said, is just a proof book, so it's much lower quality than the quality that will be distributed. And it's, to me, this is an important book because I wrote this one and dedicated it to my grandfather that started me gardening. So this is a bit of a book of love, if you like, and it's the first book, incidentally, that is through a publisher rather than being self-published. So the amount of work that went into this, you will not believe. It's come back so many times for revisions and stuff, and it's literally a year's worth of work in getting that to fruition. Now, that's available for pre-order now. I don't know if Danny has found the link I sent him on his WhatsApp. If he has, great, he can put that in the chat. If not, I will see if I can get it across. Fantastic, thanks Danny. So it's available for pre-order now, guys. The release date on that book is going to be 16th of February, and if you're into gardening, it's going to be an absolutely fantastic book for getting people thinking about the right thing. It'll walk you right the way through, even setting up your garden, understanding why the things that we decide to do, so that you understand why you're doing the things you're doing. It's also got a little bit of science in there explaining how the plants grow and how you can not manipulate, but how you can best get the best results from those plants, like people have been seeing the parsnips and the carrots and everything else in my Facebook groups and what have you. To get those results, you need to know exactly how that plant grows, and there's a little bit of that in there as well. It don't get me wrong, it doesn't go too scientific, but there's enough there for you to understand, if I do this, it's going to give me this result, So that's where the book goes. And then in the back of it has a massive section where it's got like growing guides for pretty much all the vegetables you would grow, and it also has a pest section as well and what you can do for those pests. So it's a really good little book that will allow you, somebody who is brand new or somebody who wants to take their gardening to the next step, to be able to get that book and just follow through with it and know at the end of the year they're going to have some really good harvests. And that's mainly what this book was for. But like I said, this book was a huge amount of work, and unfortunately the videos did suffer because of that. There was so many deadlines that I didn't have with the other books because I made the deadlines up for the other books, whereas when you're doing it for a publisher, they're straight on the phone, I need this by yesterday type of thing, so but it's available for pre-order now. And you can pretty much get it everywhere. I think they've got about 8 or 9 different things like Barnes Noble, Waterstones, nice. Amazon, so just click on that link, guys, and you'll be able to get a copy. So Scott, let's get back to some of the stuff we already have come through. So when you went to gardening, what What amendments could you use to best help the plants?
So one of the nice things about soil generally is when it holds more water, it also holds more heat. And so anything that you could add to your soil to increase the heat level of the soil is going to be beneficial during the cold weather. And of course, just like our summer crops, one of the best things you can do is compost. Organic matter in the soil is going to act like little sponges to absorb and hold on to that water. And we were talking about the greenhouse and your polytunnel with how effective the water is in warming up those structures. Well, it works the same way in the soil. So organic matter in the soil that can hold on to the water, absorb the heat during the day, that's going to help the soil stay warmer at night. And so it's the answer. If you got a problem with your soil, the answer is add organic matter almost without question, and especially for winter gardening, it really makes a difference. And so a darker soil as well. That's the nice thing about adding organic matter is it tends to make our soil darker,
Yeah.
and the darker color is also absorbing more energy from the sun during the day.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've got a question that's come in from Dusty Flats. What material is best for a heat sink in a 6x10 greenhouse?
So for the heat sink, typically the heat sink is like at the base or the bottom of the structure. I have a couple different heat sinks. So what I did is I dug a hole, not real deep because my soil is just so dense and it was so hard to dig in. But I dug a hole and then filled it with gravel. And then I put my water on top of that. So the gravel is going to absorb heat during the day. The water is going to absorb heat, and some of that heat's going to radiate down. And so my heat sink is primarily gravel covered with water. And then my path in between the sections of my greenhouse are concrete pavers. And so same thing, the concrete absorbs the water or absorbs the heat. So between stone and water, those are typically the two best heat masses that you can add to a greenhouse to
Yeah.
not only absorb but hold on to that heat.
There's something that I've been looking at lately. Now, one of the things when you have solar in the garden is that you need what's known as a dump to allow the the actual energy that's being created to go somewhere when the batteries are full. Okay, and I've been looking at sand batteries that
Yeah, me too.
dumps this electricity into the sand in the form of heat. And to me, that's really interesting because even in a bright winter's day, when you get them, like I said, it's a bit more rainy here, but typically if you have a cold, bright day, you're still generating electricity from the solar, and that is something that I think if you're going to waste that electricity anyway because your batteries are full, then dumping it into sand or some sort of sand battery that could then release that heat throughout the night, I think would be a good a good thing as well. But like I said, I have two of those IBCs full of water in my one tunnel, but I was thinking of trying out this sand battery in the second tunnel just to see if it makes much of a difference. So that may
Me
be
too.
another idea that folks might want to try if they have solar at the garden,
Yeah, I've seen some information where you bury copper coils or copper sheets in sand
Yeah,
and do exactly that. The copper is a very good way
conductor.
to conduct that heat and then put it into the sand. So uh, we may have seen some of the same videos, but I'm looking at doing that maybe in the February timeframe as an experiment to see if I can increase the temperature inside the greenhouse as well.
Great. So, Bohemian Herbology Natural Solutions is saying that the garden soil owes Tony to the sum of over 55 gallons of compost, organic material. And again, that was why I wrote Composting Masterclass. Too many people are spending a fortune now on compost from a store that's just totally inadequate these days, you know. And I actually went just around the corner from me is one of those council sites where they send everything to, and a lot of it's composted down, shredded first, then composted down, and then that is sold on to these bulk buyers who then bag up stuff and what have you. And I had a shock to see some of the stuff was going in. And now, a couple of years ago, I put out a Facebook post about people burning their hands when putting it in these bagged composts.
Oh,
And
wow.
it turns out that a lot of them here, because we're now going peat free, they're looking for filler for the compost, and they were shredding down plywoods and plaster boards and stuff like that to put into this compost. I was just absolutely gobsmacked at the stuff that was going in there, and this is why people are finding things like forks in them, and it's absolutely dreadful what's going on at the moment. And the only way to beat that is to make it yourself, because you know exactly what goes in there. You can control everything from the start of the process right through. And incidentally, I have a garden full of the stuff that's going to be made very shortly, so there will be another video coming out on composting. But it's the only way in which you can control the quality that you're putting back into your soil. And whatever you put in, guys, you get out later in your in your veg that you're growing, or your plants, whatever it is. You really need to make that effort, a conscious effort, to improve your soil. That's your it's the blood of the garden, and if you can look after that, then the plants. And the thing about it is, you won't need to be adding so many amendments. You're not buying compost. You're not having to worry about pests, because pests tend to attack weak plants. If you're feeding your soil, that's going to feed your plants. They're not going to be weak, much more robust, and the pests are going to go elsewhere. So
Absolutely. And when I say compost, that's generally the kind of compost that I talk about. That the compost that we buy over here in the States in our garden centers in a plastic bag are ground up wood. And you look at the ingredients, and the first ingredient is ground up wood. And then you put it in your garden, you got these big chunks of wood. And then you get into a nitrogen deprivation situation because it still needs to decompose. And so putting raw compost like that, just chunks of wood, in some cases can actually make a situation worse, even though it's labeled compost.
And something I see a lot of, especially with new gardeners, is they tend to put a lot of pictures of their plants up online, especially Facebook and Instagram, and they'll go, why is my plant all yellow, or this, that and the other? And that's exactly what's happening. The nitrogen's being robbed out of that soil because of the breakdown process, and then the plant is unable to uptake any nitrogen because it's lacking, and they start turning yellow, where they are robbing nitrogen from the outer leaves to try and keep the plant alive. And you see it too often, and it frustrates the hell out of me, because people are paying good money every single year in order to get these things, and it's actually not doing them any favors. Okay, right. Okay, so one of the questions we've had in is, what are the common challenges faced in winter vegetable gardens, and how can they overcome them?
And so, I think the most common problems, and just yesterday I was at a gathering of some of my gardener friends, and they're all saying the same thing. Why are my plants so small? Well, it's because there's just not enough light. We're about to enter the cold, or not coldest, the shortest day of the year, and so the plants just aren't getting enough light. And so the supplemental lighting really becomes a big factor when you're trying to grow in winter, so that the plants at least perform to what you expect the plant to do. The temperature is important, but if you choose the right kind of plants, they'll still grow in very cold conditions. But I think light is really the biggest factor. And then water, believe it or not, is another one. The evaporation rates are so much lower in winter
Yeah.
that people tend to overwater their plants because in summer they might have to water every single day, and then in winter they water every single day and wonder why they're killing their plants. It's because in winter you might be able to get by with once a week watering because the evaporation rates are just so much lower.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. I just want to cover something that Rick Thielen has just brought up. He's just said, doesn't your excess electricity go back to the grid if you don't have a battery or if the battery is full? In Australia, this happens, but we don't get much. It's like 12 cents to the dollar, and they buy power at 38. Yeah, it's exactly the same here. So I have solar on the house here. I have a 14 kilowatt battery. So once that's full, it then gets fed back into the grid. What I'm talking about at the moment, Rick, is in the garden, which isn't in my house. So my garden is away, well, it's literally about 200 yards away. So there's no power there at all. So I run solar, and that is about a kilowatt going on there at the moment. And they feed then into leisure batteries. And I've got a bank of leisure batteries, and when those batteries are full, which then supplies the power I need around the garden, I could then dump that into a sand battery, making use of that heat rather than it being wasted, or making use of that electricity rather than it being wasted. I could potentially add more batteries, but obviously there's a cost to that, and do I need it? I may do with one of the projects I have in mind. I'm not sure yet, but I do have a few batteries there that are all linked in a way that I get the best output from that. But that's what I'm talking about with the excess electricity. If you garden in your home and you've got solar, yeah, the excess is going to go to the grid. Okay.
Yeah, it's when you have a completely standalone, separate solar panel system
Yeah.
that you have to do something with any extra that you generate.
So, Scott, are you actually you compost leaves there, right?
I do, and you know, but what I do mostly with my leaves is leaf mold. If I've got a
Yes.
lot of leaves, I'll do just the leaves and make leaf mold. I rarely have a problem finding a brown material for my compost, and so I can use the leaves exclusively to make leaf mold. But occasionally I'll add any extra to my compost pile if I need to add some browns. But I also use leaves a lot as a mulch,
Hmm.
and I'll crush up the leaves and mix them with straw and dried grass, and that's the type of mulch that I like to do.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Now, I'm quite big on making leaf mold, and I wasn't sure if you guys made it there or not, because every
We
time I
really
see
don't.
people, yeah, it's to say every time I see a video, is people talk about leaf compost, which is mixing like a nitrogen source with the leaves just to make a compost. But here I do make a lot of leaf mold, and we have these 1 ton bulk bags that sand gets delivered in. I currently have like, I don't know, 25 of those sat there all
Wow.
ready to be ground up. And a couple of years ago, I did a video because the shredders we have here are not very good at grinding leaves. They're great for chewing up sort of like twiggy things, hard things, and they'll chunk that up quite well. But when you start putting in soft things like leaves, they don't do very well. And this year, at the beginning of the year, I bought one of those Works leaf mulchers.
Okay.
Now, we can't buy them in the UK. I bought it from the States and I shipped it over because I wanted one of these things. And it's like a strimmer head in a tub, in effect. So I'm going to be setting that up and using that to see just how good that is for mulching leaves, because they reckon it will mulch those leaves down to a 20th of
Oh,
the
wow.
start. Now, that's a massive thing, because all of a sudden then you get rid of a lot of the bulk, you can get more in, making the leaf mold process much easier rather than having such a huge area in order to mulch those leaves. Like you though, I tend to over collect them so that I can put some in the compost and some everywhere else, but I don't have a problem with browns and things either, because I'm storing stuff all year. And that's something that will go on. So not only will I be doing a compost video, I'll be doing a leaf mold video as well, because at the moment my garden's full of these things, but I wasn't sure, like I said, every time I see a video from the States, they tend to look at leaf compost rather than leaf mold. But then I was looking then on on Google Trends and stuff, and you have leaf mold spelt MOLD, and we have it MOULD. Yeah, fine. Yes. So I thought, well, it must be a thing because it's there on trending. Oh, sorry guys, all my lights have just gone out. Give me 1 second.
Just yeah, the UK is how I learned about leaf mold, right? Because we really don't do it here in the States. And I did a video a couple years ago about making leaf mold, and scores and scores of comments from Americans saying they'd never heard of that before.
And it's just a fantastic addition when you're you're sowing and things like that.
And it gets better in time. After I harvested the leaf mold and used it, I put it into a big garbage can container. And when I went back to it, even 6 months after it was mostly done, it is so fine and just so rich now that I'm using it in my potting soil, because it's actually a good alternative to coco coir or peat.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to turn these lights back on, but everything is
we can see your face okay. Oh, there you go.
Give me 1 second, guys. Is that better? Everything's timed so you can see that. I thought I changed it, but obviously not. So
make note of all this for your next stream.
We've had so many hiccups today, but it's been nice. Right, let's have a look what else we got here. Can I use greenhouses or cold frames for winter gardening? If yes, what are some of the budget-friendly options?
And so I think a polytunnel like you have is probably a better option than the greenhouse I have. My greenhouse is galvanized steel with lots of supports, and it's the polycarbonate dual wall exterior, and it's not cheap. I had to save up for many, many years to be able to get it. Whereas a polytunnel like yours, once you have the frame, and you can do the frame from reclaimed materials and then cover it. I'm guessing your polytunnel has UV protected.
It does, yeah.
Material, yeah. So that adds a little bit of expense. Yeah. But you don't need a fancy all glass greenhouse, and you don't even need one like mine with the polycarbonate panels. Just something to cover the area and help hold in the heat at night is really all you need.
So something I'm looking to do with the back tunnel this year, which was an homemade tunnel. So the frame was made from scaffolding poles and DPE plastic piping, which is like a water piping. So, and that tunnel is now 14 years old, believe it or not, and it's been moved twice. So it's done really well, but it's showing signs now. It's either going to need the timber structure that's around those poles to be renewed, or the whole thing needs renewing. Now, there is a tunnel here called a polycrub, and very similar to yours, they have quite chunky posts and hoops, and then it's polycarb. So and I do like that for a couple of reasons, because it is much more insulated than the plastic, but they're not cheap. But also you don't get so much movement in the wind, and like I'm not just so much thinking now about growing plants, but I'm also thinking about filming and everything else. And there's a lot of times I won't film in that tunnel, especially if it's windy, because the wind is moving this
Noisy.
tunnel, and it just blows the noise out. And so I'm thinking maybe a polycrub is something that would be ideal. And if they're watching, you know where to send one. So you know, but
Yeah, I've filmed inside my greenhouse, and it was 40 and 50-mile-an-hour winds outside, and you can't even hear the wind
yeah, exactly.
in my greenhouse
and
because
and it's very
it's
good
so
in the new
sturdy.
polytunnel, but of course, because when I've made this one and it's old now, and because the plastic hoop does tend to move a little bit with the wind, you know, where it's come down the front and the back of the thing is slackened up now over the years, you know, so it tends to move up quite a bit in the wind, and it does ruin that. So that's probably one of the jobs I'll do over winter now, unless, you know, Polycrub come to me with a, you know, with one and say, well, if you want to do this on a video, then I would just not grow in it this year, and I would do that as a project throughout the year, you know. But they are fantastic. Or Jay's put a link in the chat for it as well. Polycrubs they're just really beautiful. Your garden structures, really, they're not cheap, but you know they are worth the money, like, you know. So that'd be something I'd probably look at replacing that with. But that's good. Okay.
And let me say real quick, I think what you're exactly talking about right now is a good approach. Starting with a system with the plastic, with the recycled materials, to learn how to grow in a covered structure like that. And then, like me, you save up your money over a period of time and you buy the nicer one that's going to last a lot
Yeah.
longer and is sturdier. You don't have to do that right in the beginning.
Something I get quite a lot from people is, oh, the idea of growing vegetables is that you save money and what have you. But initially, that's probably why a lot of people do it. But I don't just grow now for eating, although that's why I'm growing, you know. But I'm filming and I'm making books and I'm making videos and courses and this, that, and the other. And what that entails or enables me to do over time is to save the money that I'm making in order to reinvest to make the
Exactly.
content better and everything else. Now, when I first started this, I bootstrapped everything together. I built all my own sheds, I built my polytunnels, and there's like a 26-part series on the website, and we're doing that 13 or 14 years ago. The filming is awful, but you know, it is what it is. But I mean, it was literally everything was, the timber was, you know, secondhand timbers, you know. I even, the only thing I bought for the whole thing was plastic, and that was because, you know, you can't use secondhand plastic on them. But everything I had, in fact, I'm still using the same door. I had an old steel glass door that I found in a skip, and that ended up on there as the door for it. You know, and that's just what you do when you first start,
Yeah.
and what have you. And then, to me, then it becomes a hobby. And like people who go and play golf, they'll spend a fortune on their hobby, and that's all I'm doing. It's not just about growing food as cheaply as possible now. It's my hobby. I enjoy
Right.
doing it, so I'll invest my money into that. I don't smoke. I do drink, and you know, but my point is, you know, that is my hobby. People go windsurf and they need to go and buy a windsurfer, or they'll go, you know, skateboarding, they need to buy this, that, and the other, or, you know, playing golf or football, whatever it is. You know, hobbies cost money, and this is no different. But you can, like I said, you can bootstrap it as much as you want to, and if you make content and you earn, and I know like Danny now, who's one of the moderators in the chat, he bootstrapped for years as he was going through, and now he's in a position where he's earning a little bit of money and he can reinvest that now, and he's
Yeah.
doing that into steel garden beds and making his plot look nicer, and he's, you know, building out his polytunnel, and, you know, this, that, and the other, and that's the, you know, the great thing, that now he's making a little bit of money from his channel. He's able to reinvest it to make better content, and that's where I think as far as stuff goes. So you do get people going, oh, look at you with a nice big huge tunnel, and what have you, but they don't see the 14 years worth of work in order to get there. They see it on a video there, and then they think, oh, well, no, the average person can't do that, but it was 14 years of work.
I think exactly, the average person can do that. They just it might take them 14 years to get to that point that they do it. Yeah. Patience is so important in gardening.
Oh, I know. Tell me about it. So, I've got a question here, and I probably know the answer to this one, Scott, because we've done a live stream on it. All right. How can I effectively rotate crops in winter garden to maintain soil health?
Okay, so for those of you who may not have seen the live stream we did on rotating crops, neither of us really do crop rotation as part of the traditional method, where you put in your legumes to add nitrogen to the soil, and then the next year you put in your leafy crops to take advantage of the legumes, and then the next year you do your root crops. So we really don't follow a rotation method because we improve the soil, and by improving the soil you can grow the same crop in the same bed every single year. And so that's the way I approach my winter gardening. In my greenhouse, I was growing tomatoes and peppers, and I pulled those out and I amended my soil. And now I'm growing the leafy salad crops because the temperature is different, and those are the plants that will survive. So I'm not rotating the plants in my greenhouse.
Oh, seems we've lost Scott there. I don't know what's happened there, guys. So while he's coming back, I don't know if he'll just pop back in. Hopefully he will. Do me a favour in the chat, guys. Just give me a thumbs up or something to let me know that we are still streaming, because like I said, Scott's gone out, and I'm not sure if it's still going. But essentially, what I will say to this is, where Scott was going with this then was that we don't really crop rotate, but we are in some form or another, because how people look at, thanks for the thumbs up, guys, great, how people look at this this whole system is that they look at it as growing one vegetable per year, and then they rotate then next year. Invariably, that never happens, okay? Especially if you're gardening right. You might be growing carrots or potatoes in the ground at one part of the year. As soon as they're harvested, you might be putting carrots or something else in to follow that. Well, effectively now you've crop rotated, because that carrot is a different crop to the potatoes. And then after that you might be putting in winter greens, and then you might go back to potatoes again the following year. But so effectively you've had 3 crops in there. But again, it's about nutrient balance. The crop rotation has come from the the huge farmers that are farming hundreds and hundreds of acres, and they they just don't know. Oh, Scott is staying, he's still here, great. They just don't know. Let me see if he's come back. No. Okay, I don't know what's happened. Can you get back in, Scott? Let me just check a sec, guys. Check he's not waiting in the background somewhere. There we are. Okay, you're back. Yeah, so,
Okay.
yes, I was just saying, Scott, so, crop rotations tends to be something that's come from the farming industry, where they're farming hundreds and hundreds of acres of land, with a monocrop culture. They're growing the same thing in there time and time and time again. Eventually, the nutrients in that soil then get depleted because the crops are still taking the same nutrients. Whereas, in a garden, you're not doing that sort of monocropping. You're growing multiple crops over a period of time, and then eventually coming back around in the year and then growing the same potatoes or whatever it is
Yeah.
after that. So that's essentially
And
what it is.
what I was saying when I dropped off was the the crop rotation is kind of natural with winter gardening because you're growing different types of plants. So
Yeah,
I'm growing I'm growing my kale and my lettuce and my spinach right now, not because I'm rotating crops, but because I can't grow the tomatoes and the peppers in the cold conditions.
yeah.
And so the temperature really kind of automatically does the rotation for you.
Okay, let's have a little look here. What else have we got here? Um, so this is quite a good one. How does the winter gardening differ in different climate zones, and should you adapt any specific practices accordingly?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I've been communicating with different gardeners who are just a couple zones. Now, the UK has fewer zones than we do here in the States. And so I'm in zone 5B, which means my average lowest winter temperature is about minus 26°C. And so nothing will grow when it's that cold. And so that's why I effectively shut down my winter growing. But someone who grows in a different zone where the outside temperatures only get down to, let's say, minus 7 Celsius, they can grow almost anything, especially if you throw in the greenhouse. So absolutely makes a complete difference what your climate is and what your winter is for plant selection and whether you can even grow. Here in Florida and Arizona, all the southern states right now, they're still actively growing some of those summer crops because they haven't had freezing temperatures yet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same in the UK. It's just on a much smaller scale because of the footprint of the UK compared to the US, whereas it usually starts in the south with us and works north. It's the same thing. And you guys have just had like a rebanding of all of your zones as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
So, where, like where I live, I'm around an 8A at the moment, where I used to be an 8B, if you look at that. So it's really strange, but um, you know, and at those temperatures, like we've had mild winters this last few years. All it's done is rain. It's not got really cold for long periods, so you can pretty much grow in a greenhouse in that. There's a lot of hardy salad crops that you can grow. Like oh, it looks like Scott's gone again. Like those sort of winter salads, the mizunas and the mitsunas and stuff like that. So, so there's lots you can do. But what you need to do is understand your local climate, and there'll be microclimates within that. But once you understand that, then you can say, okay, I can grow this, 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 and this, and that's what I'm going to do this year. Think about speaking to local gardeners near you, and local gardeners near you, and then once you have those conversations with those, you'll understand your climate better. If I was living, I just moved in by Scott now, I wouldn't have a clue what I'd be able to grow, and vice versa. So the first thing I'd be doing is knocking on Scott's door. Hi Scott, chuck a kettle on, let's have a little chat. Right, what's going on? Why is it doing this? What can I do? Can I grow this? Yes or no? Why? Right? And then you understand what's going on a micro level for where you are. But having those conversations is really important, guys.
Absolutely.
Get out there and talk to people. And you'll find, like, Scott and I will talk, not just on here, but we will talk on email and WhatsApp and things like that about things. And we live other sides of the world, but yet he's doing similar things to what I'm doing at the same time. But, those frost dates change and things like that. And then you just need to adapt a little bit just to be able to do that. Like, Danny's growing a banana in his garden. He's wrapped it up recently. I've grown bananas here, and I've still got a couple. But there's a variety called dwarf Cavendish that you can grow in this country. It will fruit and they're edible, right? Whereas like the Bijous and what have you are more decorative bananas. And when I first said to people, I'm going to try and grow a banana, granted I haven't got it to fruit yet, but they look at me like I've got horns coming out my head or something. But look, as a gardener, the idea is to experiment and test. And then you can see how far you can push those boundaries. If you lose some plants, you can't grow them at that time. So that experiment was a success, even though the plants died. So you just have to
Absolutely.
look at it that way. I think we'll take one more question, Scott, and then I'm going to close it up because we're just over the hour now.
Okay.
Let's have a look here. Okay, what are some tips for maximizing sunlight exposure for my winter garden?
So one of the things I did in my greenhouse, I put insulation on the north wall because the sun is going to be lower in the sky in the winter. And so I put a reflective surface insulation so that I'm not only getting the light that comes straight through the side of the greenhouse, but I'm also getting light bouncing off the back of the greenhouse because of that reflective surface. And so basically, it's not exactly double the light, but I'm increasing the amount of light and the amount of rays that are in my greenhouse. So that's one way to do that. And then, like we were talking solar earlier, you could have a solar panel that's lighting a light bulb during the day. That's another factor that I think a lot of people don't think about. The sun is out and they think that's enough, but like we said earlier, it's not intense enough. And so you can have solar powered lighting inside your greenhouse during the day to increase the amount of lumens that the plants are actually receiving. And that's an option as well.
Yeah, and that's part of one of the projects that I'm in the middle of at the moment because last year, you know what this room is like. It's full of tropical plants in here. It's warm. There's a lot of lighting in here. And this was where I raised a lot of my seedlings for the plot this year. My tomatoes, my peppers, those sort of things, okay? But it was an absolute nightmare. I was falling over them when I was trying to do live streaming. I couldn't move in here. And then, of course, all that extra water created a lot of condensation that I had to deal with. I had a bit of mould up here, which I had to sort out. So one of the projects I'm doing at the moment is a complete revamp of an old unsafe shed that was on the plot. A lot of people will know about it. And the idea behind that is there is completely no windows in it. And that will be an insulated shed that I'm able to light with LED, all based on solar. It'll be heated with a diesel heater and I'll be able to raise all my seedlings in there. So that's the
Nice.
project that I'm finishing up at the moment. And I'll give you guys a look at that or where it's at the moment when we do the walk around video. Scott, if you want to tell people how they can find you, there is a link below, but just tell them about yourself and where they can find you and the things you're doing now, and we'll look at wrapping this up then.
Okay, yeah, I'm at Gardener Scott. Gardener Scott on YouTube, Gardener Scott on Instagram, Gardener Scott on Facebook, and I've been focusing lately on greenhouse videos. So I've got some videos where I'm showing the temperature changes in the greenhouse, how effective the water actually is by measuring the temperatures. And then it's about time to do the seed starting. So I'll be doing the planting videos and the seed starting videos to come out. And then on Mondays, I have my live stream. So my live stream starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon your time, and I do that every Monday. Next week will be my last live stream of the year because the Monday after that is Christmas, and the Monday after that is New Year's. So one more left in the year. But more videos to come and more live streams to come in 2024 at Gardener Scott.
So guys, Jay Dixon's just put a link for Scott's channel in the chat. So if you're not already subbed to Scott, get over there, have a look what he's all about. You will absolutely love it. Scott and I have been friends for years, and we've done plenty of live streams and things together. And the reason being, Scott's a master gardener, he knows his stuff, and you're going to love the information that he puts across. So what I will say, like I said, I miss Scott's. It's such an awkward time for me because when I want to be on Scott's channel, I'm either just about to drive to work or I'm driving from work. So I missed it completely. I was on a call today when Scott's live was on, so I missed it completely. I got in just as it finished it. So, but it is what it is, isn't it? Yeah, so look, guys, thanks very much. Hopefully the next one won't run alongside somebody else's live stream, and people will be able to get in here and enjoy it. I really want to thank you all for coming. Don't forget, you can pre-order Simplified Vegetable Gardening. Guys,
it's a good book. I've read it.
This book, yeah, Scott's read it. And like I said, I mean, all my other books have been a lot of text and not much pictures and stuff, because there was so much information I wanted to give that filling them out with pictures and everything else would have made the book way too thick, too expensive to print. So I cut back on the pictures, but this book is absolutely plastered with them right throughout the book. So, you know, you can see it. And the book, guys, is just fantastic. There's a dedication to my grandfather in here. It's by Quarto and Cool Springs. So the link is in the description, thanks to Jay. Get across, pre-order a copy. And they, like I said, it will launch on the 14th of February. But get over there, pre-order them now ready. You can choose from wherever you want them. So if you don't like Amazon, there are Waterstones and Barnes and Noble and all of that, and they're ready to take your orders, basically. Scott, have you got any last things you want to say to the folks before we leave?
No, thanks for having me on the show today. It's great to see you back. And winter gardening is one of those things that it takes time. Like you said, you've got to know your own climate. It's good to talk to other gardeners in your neighborhood who are doing it so you can figure out the right way to do it. But experiment and give it a try. It can increase the length of time you have plants in the ground.
So, folks, thanks very much for coming, Scott, and for you joining as well. What I will say, guys, like I said, next week I'll put it out a couple of days before so you know it. Share it with everybody to let them know that the live streams are back. You know what it's like when you have a first live stream. Not many people know about it, and I literally just dumped it online yesterday. So I really appreciate you all turning up today and what have you. I'm going to get these weekly now, but it won't be a specific day. I just can't manage that with my working pattern. When I eventually go full-time at YouTube, then maybe, but at the moment it's just not possible. I've got loads and loads to show you at the garden, and I've got lots of stuff going to be going on next year. I'm going to be taking a break from writing books for a while so I can concentrate on making some really good content for you guys as well. So thanks very much for joining us, and I hope to see you all next week. Bye Scott.